Welcome to Tea with Tanya. I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose, an average millennial navigating life as a maternal health professional, nonprofit founder, and grad student. Join me in the tea tasting room where we spill the tea on finding balance and promoting positive living while doing it all. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Tea with Tanya. It is always a pleasure, a joy, and a privilege to be able to meet you back here in the tea tasting room every week as we continue on our health and wellness journey, as we continue to take our lives to the next level. You know, we're in our elevation period, our elevation era, so it's always a pleasure to be in this tea tasting room with you. And today we're going to be talking about health screenings you should make time for. But before I get into that, I am not necessarily drinking any tea, right now on my ginger tea kick because, I'm a little bit, I'm seeing some bloating because, I'm at that point in my menstrual cycle right now. So I've been drinking some ginger tea, but I want to share because I'm recording this episode after I would have returned from a trip that I took for school for one of my favorite classes this semester, and that's my public health systems, policy, and leadership class. We had we call it field experience, essentially, and that was held in Hopcar, Barony, Georgetown, South Carolina, and I'm so happy I got the privilege to go, and we were able to explore the diverse coastal ecosystems along with its historical and cultural influences. We got to learn about Bernard Baruch and Belle Baruch, who essentially, I'm just going to leave that guy up to you guys for you guys to go and Google these people. But, again, because I'm not going to share much about that, but definitely it was an amazing time. If you don't know, I do go to school online for the most part. My health service, I'm getting my MPH, my Master's of Public Health in Health Services, Policy and Management, and that is primarily online. And I'm getting my maternal child health certificate of graduate study as well. So I have that one class for that MCH program in person. But for the most part, I've been online, and every semester I have at least one class that meets in person. And luckily, my amazing classmates who I met, and we were on this trip together with our amazing professor. Some I've had classes with before, like in the spring semester. But however, we only had a conversation, and we only would talk in the class. Once that was done, it was I'm going home, I'm going to work, while they're probably getting ready to go to their other class as well. Because also I'm not realizing, and I had to accept that growing up all my life in primary school and high school, I was usually the youngest in the class, and even at some point in my undergrad. But now I'm on that spectrum, on that level where I'm now becoming the older. I'm the big sister in the class to some extent. Of course, there are other individuals who are older than me in the class as well, but I'm so used to being the youngest that now I'm not the youngest anymore. It did feel weird, but I love it. And my classmates that I met, some I've had classes with online, and of course some in person. But again, like I said, that relationship only stayed when the class was over. And I think for this trip, getting to meet some of my classmates who were online and probably only would have heard my name or seen my name and vice versa with them online, being able to see them in person was what I needed to refill my cup, to be honest. The same thing with my professors. Of course, we've spoken via email. That's basically what it is. I'm also probably seeing your face from the modules that they would record, but being able to be in that space with all these amazing scholars. Like prior to this trip, I was a little bit emotional. How should I put it? I guess I would say I was emotionally and mentally stressed, or I don't know what I want to say, but I guess I'll just say that. It was an emotional time, a stressful period, those few days prior to going on that trip. And I honestly was going to just pull out from the trip. But I'm like, you know what? No, because I'm the kind of person, like I always try to tell you, whenever an opportunity presents itself, you better believe that I'm going to jump on that opportunity. I do not let an opportunity pass by because you just never know who you're going to meet, what you're going to run into, what you can learn. So as much as I was not feeling like myself, I wanted to remove myself from said trip. I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go on this trip. I'm going to learn. I'm going to get to network. Because one thing about me, I'm going to network. I am going to network. You're going to know I have a podcast. You're going to know I have a nonprofit. You're just going to know as much as you possibly can. You're going to know I'm the island girl with the accent, like I always try to tell them. But anyway, nevertheless, it was just an amazing time being able to be on with my classmates. And of course, I met some Tea with Tanya friends. They were there and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to meet Tea with Tanya. It was so funny. And so cool because one of my classmates also, shout out to Ashanti, she was telling me that as she was driving down, because the commute from where we were in South Carolina to the place that we went to, Hubcar Barony, it was like almost a 2.5 hour drive for me, but it was also 4 hours for some people as well, depending on where in South Carolina they were coming from. And she was telling me that on the way down, she was listening to a Tea with Tanya podcast episode. So that was just so heartwarming and made me feel fuzzy inside to actually see that sometimes, to be honest with you, when I get intimidated, that imposter syndrome be coming up way too often for me. But like I said, in 2023, we're not going to really deal or give imposter syndrome any sort of credit or any sort of energy. But to be honest, sometimes it does happen. And, when I started this podcast, I always said that I would, if I can just touch one person or if one person can just listen to my podcast, I would have done my job because that one person is going to tell that other person and then the other person is going to tell that other person. And before you know it, I'm having a full tea tasting room of tea tasters listening to Tea with Tanya. So it was just an amazing time seeing that. But also just being able to network and connect with, again, my fellow classmates and getting to know them on the level that we left that trip calling each other family. That bond. And it reminded me of my time being in Girl Guides. It reminded me of my time when I did my study abroad as well, and just how I've been able to maintain these relationships with people who I don't get to see every day. But being on this trip, being able to talk to my professors so they can put a name or put a face to my name, talking about the work that I do, and just, again, each other, just pouring into each other. Like I said, my cup was dry. It was on the last drip, honey. But being on that trip, it supercharged me, it refilled my cup, and I'm just ready to tackle whatever I have, whatever I was putting off and just could not even deal with. I am back at it because let me tell you, I needed that. My cup is filled till it's running over, it's spilling over. So I hope that you're feeling this energy as I'm recording this episode, and you can also probably be refilled from this episode. So definitely, that's my tea. Being able to network, connect with my professors, with my old classmates, and just also learning again about the ecosystem, the coastal system down in Hubcar, Barony as well. So that was amazing. Some really cool, interesting facts. And I'll just leave a link to that as well if you're interested, if you're looking. Because it's a tourist destination, I would say. It's very historical. So if you're into history, you just want to try something that you've never been before, you definitely should check out Hubcar Barony in Georgetown, South Carolina. And I'm going to give a special shout out to my school as well, the Honor School of Public Health, for essentially sponsoring our trip, for covering everything of this magnitude. I didn't know what to expect, but nevertheless, it exceeded whatever expectations I would have had. And I always tell you, so we can use social media for good, or we can use it for something negative, or it can also become toxic. And that's the same thing with networking. And I'll do another episode because I'm already blabbing. But nevertheless, this trip, this 2-3 day trip that I was on, really showed me the power of networking. And I know I've spoken about networking on the podcast many episodes ago, but I thought in the back of my mind somehow, I just thought that it was key to network more as an undergrad. But I'm realizing that as a grad student, that you really have to continue to network. And, you have peers, you're able to work with your professors. So again, being in this environment really, really did help me and just refill the cup that was running on empty. Like that engine was about to shut off. I was running out of fuel. Like when I say I was literally on E, I was on E, but now I am back on full and I'm hoping to remain there. And I think similar to when I went to Uganda, how that trip changed my mind or changed my life for the better, I think this trip, to be honest, changed my life and just got me back to where I needed to be. You know what, boss babe Tanya, she's back. Okay. So the next time you see me in the tea tasting room, you're gonna be like, sis, you glowing? Yes, that's me, because this trip did that. So definitely I encourage you also to try and find something that, pour into yourself in whatever shape or form you can, so you can refill and recharge and refuel your body and your mind and just your spirit and your soul. All right, I'm done talking. Let's get into it. So we're going to talk, you can tell by the title of this episode, we're going to be talking about health screenings that you should make time for. And another thing that came up on the trip when I went with my school as well, we were just talking about different health issues that some of us may have had and how hard it is sometimes to even advocate for yourself. So, it's just fitting that I'm recording this episode right after I'm coming from that trip, because some of these conversations are fresh in my mind. But I really want to talk about health screenings that we should be taking time for, because believe it or not, when we talk about advocating for ourselves. Some of us are walking around here not knowing what health screenings we should have or how to advocate to even get tested or get certain things done when it comes to your primary care provider. And when I'm talking about health screenings, that involves any sort of test, any exams that is going to be able to detect early any potential health problems one may encounter or any diseases even before the symptoms itself may manifest. Because I think when it comes to different health screenings, it helps us to identify any sort of issues earlier on so that we can take any steps. We can be proactive. The goal is to be proactive. So we're able to manage our health and prevent any sort of disease as well. So, we talk about early detections can help to improve any treatment or outcome. Sometimes we often hear that word early detection when it comes to, let's say, an STI or STD, or we often hear that when it comes to cancer screenings as well. And of course, why that is important, I encourage you and I want you to know that any sort of as much as you can, you want to get regular screenings because that's going to end up helping you to have a better health outcome and even the better quality of life. You can extend your life expectancy as well by doing these things. Sometimes we screen for medical issues. We want to ensure that we are assessing for any future, or potential medical problems that may arise. And of course, to see if we need to change our lifestyle so we can, again, how here in the tea tasting room, we're all about having a healthy lifestyle. So these screenings are going to help with that. And, it's going to talk about updating our vaccinations or any sort of preventative care services that we can have. And also just to get to know your provider on a one-on-one basis. Because I think sometimes we tend to, I know in my experience, we go to the doctor, you may meet your doctor for the first time and you're just doing whatever they tell you to do. And then you don't see them again for another year or maybe even 6 months. So I'm just going to say a year because sometimes, they recommend you seeing your physician once a year. But you only see them once a year, but you don't have that relationship with them. I think, when you go and you're getting your regular checkup, it also helps to create that rapport and that relationship between you and your primary care provider. It really plays a pivotal role when it comes to maintaining your overall health and well-being. And there are a lot of different health screenings, essentially that's tailored to any sort of specific age groups, your gender, your risk factors, as far as your ethnic background, your race, all these different things. And as a Black woman, we are most likely prone for many different health issues. For some reason, we are the ones that we top in certain categories when it comes to health screening. But some of these health screening could be mammograms, all these different things. But I am going to take my time to go through some of them. And this is going to be both for women and, of course, for my men tea tasters as well. Because, again, optimal health is for everyone. We should have that. So as it relates to women and men, but women age 18 to 39, you want to ensure that you are having your blood pressure checked at least once or twice a year. And in my opinion, that's still a little bit. But let me stop right here. Before I continue, I do want to say I am not a medical provider. I am a public health professional. Research is my game. I'm not a medical provider. So anything that you may hear from me today, I am just here speaking from my personal opinion and of course some research that I did, but also to get you to understand and to start thinking about the different screenings that you should be asking your care provider for. There's no way, shape, or form that this is any medical advice, because again, I am not a medical provider. I'm not here to give you any medical advice. I'm just helping you so that you can help yourself. Okay? I had to put that disclaimer out there so that we're very clear. Nothing that I'm saying here is any medical advice. Please just take it as you see fit, because I'm here to encourage you to ensure that you're able to have the quality life that you deserve. Okay? So you want to ensure that you are checking your blood pressure at least once or twice a year. And if you didn't know, a normal blood pressure usually range from 120 over 80. Sometimes it can go the bottom number, because the normal range that they'll tell you, especially in these nursing books as well, it's 120 over 80. Sometimes for me, my blood pressure runs sometimes 110 over 70, or maybe 106 over 60, or I don't think 60. I think my baseline is 110 over 70. And what I mean by baseline now, sometimes you go to your doctor, or if you're ill and you end up going to urgent care or the emergency room, the first thing they're going to do, they're going to take your vitals. And that includes your heart rate, your pulse, your breath, and your blood sugar, and of course your temperature. But I said blood sugar, I meant to say blood pressure. But what I want to point out, sometimes, and you can tell me if you've experienced this, you go to the doctor and the tech is going to come in and they're going to take your blood pressure and then they're going to take your temperature and then they're going to put that little thing, I can't remember the name right now, on your finger, right? And they're taking all these records, and when they're done, they remove the blood pressure cuffs and they're going about their business, or they probably enter in whatever information that they took in the computer. And they probably never even tell you what your blood pressure is, what your heart rate is. I don't know. I've had that happen to me, so I'm going to assume, but I don't want to assume. So you definitely got to give me that feedback to let me know if you've experienced this. It's very important that anytime you're getting any vitals taken, that you're going to ask the tech, the nurse, whoever it is that's taking your vital signs. You need to know what your blood pressure is. You need to know what your heart rate is. You need to know what your temperature was. You need to know all these different things, because this is how you establish your baseline. So when let's say one day you end up going to the emergency room and your blood pressure is 140 over 80 or 140 over 90, right? You're able to indicate and tell that care provider that, you know what, I usually run a 120 over 80 or 110 over 70. So obviously 140, which is higher, is out of the normal range. So that is not your baseline. So then that now would encourage them to run more tests or recheck your blood pressure to see what is causing this elevated blood pressure. So it's very important that you get this blood pressure checked once or twice a year, or even more. It doesn't matter, because you can randomly, if you're in the United States, you can go into a pharmacy and get your blood pressure taken. If you're in Antigua, in the Caribbean, I know we have many different clinics around that we can go in and get our blood pressure taken as well. And wherever you are listening to this world, I know at some point in time, you should have the capacity. And even if you don't, again, we gotta work on that. But you want to know your baseline when it comes to your blood pressure and your vital signs. So that's going to be key. So you know your baseline, so you're better able to advocate for yourself now if something were to change with that baseline. Now, of course, if you're a Black, you want to know your family history when it comes to blood pressure, because we know that can lead to heart disease. It can also lead to kidney problems. If you are overweight, you may tend to have elevated blood pressure. That is not always the case, but it could be. And, of course, I'm not going to leave out my pregnant girlies or my girlies trying to conceive, because, again, knowing your baseline, especially when it comes to being pregnant, during pregnancy, you need to know what that baseline is before you get pregnant and what your baseline is during your pregnancy. That way, that's how your care provider can test to see maybe you're having any preeclampsia signs, any signs or symptoms that is concerning as it relates to you and your pregnancy. So you definitely want to know that baseline. Like I said, if you are a Black woman, even if you're not Black, but again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these issues tend to happen primarily within the Black community as well. So you want to ensure that you know your family history. And if you have a family history of high blood pressure, you definitely need to be getting your blood pressure checked as often as possible. I cannot express that to you enough. Another screening I want to talk about is the breast cancer screening. It's very important that we practice our self-exam. I am going to be honest. I went to my OBGYN a few weeks ago for my annual checkup, and she was asking me, I was telling about some different things, but she was asking me, when was the last time you did a breast self-exam? I was like, Doc, I'm not going to even lie to you, because I'm going to be honest here, and I'm going to be transparent with you. I want to keep this episode short, but you're not going to blab. But I am going to be transparent. I've been guilty of, when I'm going to see my care provider, sometimes I'm not always honest. I don't. If you're listening to me, I don't want you judging me, because I have not always been honest, because out of sheer embarrassment, and then sometimes, living in this country, you're already a Black woman. I got so many other battles I got to fight. It's like, why tell you certain things if you're not going to listen to me? But I quickly realized that was not a way for me to continue living my life. So I'm encouraging you. You want to be honest with your care provider. But anyway, she's like, Miss Ambrose, have you been doing your breast self-exam? I was like, no, to be honest, I don't do it as often as I should. I know, but sometimes I'm just lazy. I don't want to be doing all that. Mind you, full transparency, I love my boobs, But the fact of the matter is, sometimes I'm just on the go. I don't have time I was not making time rather for my breast self-exam. So I definitely want to encourage you to do that, because as you're doing that, again, you're being in tune with your body, and it's how you are able to check your breast for any lumps or any changes as well, depending again on your health history. And if your doctor is encouraging you to do your breast exam, you definitely want to do that. And this is a way also for you to learn about your your breasts, how they would normally look, how they would feel, so that you can see when there's a big difference. Now you're able to explain to your care provider what the difference is. I will say this, again, doing your self breast exam is not replacing doing a mammogram, but when you're able to have these consistent self exam, it helps you and your care provider to know about any abnormalities that may occur. And it's recommended that, if we're under 40, we're not necessarily recommended to do a mammogram. But again, depending on your family history, if your mother, or your sister were diagnosed early, you definitely want to ensure that you're getting these exams done as frequently as you need to, given the family history. But again, I'm encouraging you to practice your breast self exam so you can know when something is off in your body. And this goes up to the men too, because as we know, men can also be diagnosed with breast cancer as well. So you should be getting your breast checked at least once to twice a year, or every 1 to 2 years. The other thing I want to talk about is cervical cancer screening. We just celebrated, I think it was Cervical Cancer Awareness Month back in January. But cervical cancer awareness screening, that essentially should start at age 21, according to the Mayo Clinic. It should be starting at age 21, unless it's otherwise advised, again, by your care provider. And again, we're checking for this because that is how a lot of these tests are preventative measures, so that you can know what is happening within your body. So when there's a change, both you and your provider will know what course of action to take as well. So you definitely want to factor in cervical cancer screening. And again, that should start at age 21 years and up, unless it is told by your provider that you need to be taking it earlier or as often as they may require. And if you're a woman listening to this podcast, if your age is 21 to 29, again, you want to ensure that you are having a pap test. So even if you're an individual with a vagina, you want to ensure that you're having a pap test at least every 3 years if you're between the ages of 21 and 29. Some providers may not agree. For me, I think I get mine done every year because, of course, insurance, that's another thing. And, your insurance will pay for it. Will pay for it. So for me, I don't pay to get a pap smear done. However, while it's recommended to get it done every 2 to 3 years, given the type of health insurance you may have living in the United States, it might be wise, or your doctor may just recommend you getting it every year as well. But again, once from ages 21 and up, or 21 to 29, you should be getting a pap smear every 3 years. And of course, that's a time to have the conversation with your doctor about the HPV vaccine. Of course, that depends on what your stance is when it comes to vaccination. But again, these are some things you should be looking out for. Another screening, or another thing that you should be doing, is the colorectal cancer screening. And with this screening, it's testing for polyps, and sometimes you may end up doing a colonoscopy. They recommend that we do a colonoscopy every 5 years, but that may not be the case depending on your medical history as well. So again, all what I'm listing here are things that I've actively done or are currently in the process of getting done because of whatever my health history may be. So you definitely want to ensure that you're factoring in these into your screenings that you should be getting done as you're doing your checkup every year. The other one is, and it's funny because I say my favorite, but in a way, because the next thing that you should be doing is your cholesterol, getting tested for your cholesterol. According to research and study, women age 40, if you have no known factors, then, you should be getting it done once a year if you have no known factors for any sort of coronary disease. And if you're age 20 and up, if you're known for any risk factors, then you want to get tested at least every 5 years, according to the Mayo Clinic. But let me tell you this, I'm showing my age. I am a 33-year-old Black woman and Caribbean Black woman, okay? I'm an island gal. And I was essentially diagnosed with high cholesterol when I was in my mid-20s, right? And when I said that, I was devastated because I'm like, here I am, this slim girl, was once an athlete, playing sports, doing whatever I got to do. And why is my cholesterol level that high in my mid-20s, right? And with that, my doctor was like, we got to work on your lifestyle changes. For me, I wasn't eating as healthy as I am now. And when I say healthy, I wasn't eating like a balanced meal or that contains, your proteins, your carbs, your healthy fats and these different things. And I had to do a drastic that I call it drastic. It may not be drastic to you. But I had to end up doing a lifestyle change. I started getting more active. I started eating cleaner or started eating better because I was determined to have these cholesterol levels go down. Because what I'm not going to do is be on a cholesterol medication at age 33 or at the time between ages 25 and 30. It was not going to be. So I definitely, you want to ensure that you're checking your cholesterol as well. And especially, again, based on your family history, if you're known to have heart disease or anything, this is something that you should be getting checked regularly. Because sometimes some of these things, cholesterol, just requires like a lifestyle change. It's the type of food that you eat, depending on your weight. And of course, you need to have like that change in your diet and be more physically active as well. So you should be screening and get it tested for your cholesterol. Another thing that I want to mention is, you want to check your thyroid as well. A friend of mine mentioned that because we're living in a society where things are changing in our environment. You just never know. So sometimes, for me, in my opinion, we rely on our family history. But as we're seeing in today's society, sometimes you don't even have to have a history of anything in your family for you to become, ill and these different things. And that's why it's important for us to know our baseline, follow up with these different screenings so we can know what is going on within our body. So you want to get your thyroid checked as well if you're having any hormonal issues, if you're having drastic weight gain or drastic weight loss as well. So you want to encourage your doctor to also give you like a thyroid test just to make sure everything is working and functioning, in your bodies. You also want to get screening for diabetes. Now, I will say from doing my research, screenings are they typically start at like 35 years old or every 3 years. However, again, like I'm going to keep stressing because a lot of these screenings have to do with your family history. See if you know someone who may be diagnosed with diabetes or even pre-diabetes, you want to ensure again, a lot of this is a lifestyle change that you need to make, but you want to have that conversation with your healthcare provider so that they can look at the family history, look at your weight, look at whatever it is to see if you are pre-diabetic or you are diabetic as well. And of course, if you're planning to get pregnant, we need to know if you are either pre-diabetic or diabetic so that way your provider can provide you with a course of action as you continue that pregnancy because gestational diabetes is a thing. It is a thing. And we also want to ensure that you're having a safe pregnancy and your fetus is also, your baby is also healthy as well. So you want to get these screenings as well, just to ensure that you're on the straight and narrow. Because sometimes I know, funny story going on, a lot of people would say, oh, you're going to get diabetes if you eat too much sweets. But little do we know that it's not only sweets that's going to give you diabetes. There's fats, there's so many different things. Again, that lifestyle change, being mindful of what you're putting in your body. You're never too young. Definitely never too young to have diabetes because, we've known individuals who may have type 1 or type 2 or develop that gestational diabetes. So you want to do this screening just to make sure that you are okay so you can continue to practice and make these different lifestyle changes. Another one that sometimes we seem to forget is getting our dental, when it comes to dental. Oral health is very important, and oral health is connected to so many different things that you would be amazed as to what that is connected to. It can connect to your gut, it can connect to, any sort of disease, pneumonia, or any sort of heart disease as well. So you definitely want to ensure that you are seeing your dentist minimum of twice a year, unless they tell you otherwise. Because you want to get those cleanings, you want to get those exams so that you can ensure that there's no bacteria, because some of these bacteria in your mouth can lead to heart disease, pneumonia, and so many other life-changing issues. So you definitely want to practice oral hygiene, ensure that you're seeing your doctor. One of the questions that, or data information I have to collect for my job, especially when it comes to our pregnant moms, is asking, well, have you seen a doctor, a dentist within the last 6 months to 1 year or less than 6 months? Or is it more than 1 year or 2 years? And then, of course, if it's more than a year or two, we will definitely try to connect them with some resources to assist with that. But again, our oral health is very important. You want to ensure that you're seeing your dentist at least twice a year to get those dental exams going and to get those bacteria and to get get your cleanings. Like for me, I had my appointment a few days ago as well for my cleaning because one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get this mouth clean, okay? And also ensure that my exams and everything in my mouth is going very important. It's very important because again, it's connected to so many different things in our body. So you want to do that dental check once or twice a year. Another one, and I'm guilty of this, is getting our eye exam. Now I do wear reading glasses. Do I wear the reading glasses when I read all the time? Absolutely not. Because what? Sometimes I'm just too lazy, and sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't need my reading glasses. But I'm getting older, and it's turning out that I do need my reading glasses more, more and more. But what I'm trying to say is, you want to ensure that you're doing an eye exam. I advise, again, this is not medical advice, but for me, I try to get my eyes checked once a year. No, this has been the longest that I've gone. It's been at least probably almost, that's crazy. I'm going to say 2.5 years, because then, of course, of COVID and the pandemic. But it's been 2.5 years since I've gone to my eye doctor. And that is not good, especially for someone who works behind a screen pretty often. I definitely need to be doing that. I can't just keep relying. I'm pretty sure I need to up my glasses as it relates to the lens. But definitely want to get your eye exam. They recommend every 2 years, but again, you use your discretion. And if you're someone who may have some issues or eye problems as well, your doctor would, of course, recommend you coming in more frequently than some others. You want to get tested for any infectious disease such as STI or STDs. If you're sexually active, you want to ensure that you're getting screened for chlamydia and gonorrhea, especially from age 25 as well, is what the Mayo Clinic would have recommended. But you definitely want to ensure that you are getting tested for these STIs. You have chlamydia, gonorrhea, especially if you're sexually active and you're having unprotected sex. Okay. You want to also think about maybe hepatitis C, from ages 18 to 79. That's a one-time test. And of course, if you are pregnant, they do recommend you have that hepatitis screening every year as well. You want to check for HIV and other STIs. And while I'm here on this, talking about these other tests, when it comes to immunizations, or vaccines, I don't know what side of the spectrum you're on, but that's your personal choice. But some of the most common needed vaccines that they're recommending is the flu shot, which you get once a year. The COVID vaccine, of course, you want to ask your provider what is best for you. And of course, you got to weigh the options as to what you think is best for you and what your decision would be. We talk about the Tdap vaccine. We should be having one, I think, at least after the age of 19. And if you did not receive it as an adolescent, I know for us growing up in Antigua, I remember, I think we were in third form. I think that's going to be grade 9 here in the US or wherever you are. But we had nurses come to our schools, and we got the Tdap and the other shots as well, again, because it was a requirement to be in school as well. So you want to get your tetanus shot. That's once every 10 years. You want to do the varicella vaccine. That's the vaccine for chickenpox. That should be 2 doses as well. You want to think about the hepatitis B vaccine, that you should receive at least 2 to 4 doses, depending on your circumstances. And you want to get your MMR vaccine, and that's the measles, mumps, and rubella, which we should receive 1 to 2 doses if you're not already immune to MMR. Again, I'm just listing these immunizations. You do what you think is best for you. But as we're on this healthcare journey, again, I'm not here to argue with, vaccine is doing this, vaccine is doing that. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm just trying to get you to understand the things that you need to consider when it comes to your health and wellness. And if you're a woman with a vagina, of course, you want to think about HPV, or just if you're sexually active. These are some vaccines that, again, you want to have that conversation with your healthcare provider. Of course, the physical exam, that's usually once a year. We do this well woman visit or well checkup, where it doesn't matter where you are, what you are as an individual. We do these physical exams so that we can assess for any potential medical problems, so we can see how best we can move towards a healthier lifestyle. And also, this is how you're able to advocate for yourself. Like I mentioned earlier, when you're taking your vital signs, you need to know what your baseline is. And the purpose of some of these physical exams is for you to know, so you can advocate and you can be honest with your provider. I had someone tell me recently that they had a provider that was not listening to them, and they took another provider or 2 other providers for them to actually listen to her and give her the necessary test that she needed. So again, when we talk about advocacy, and I'll do another podcast episode on that, you want to be able to know about your body, know what you've done, know what is right, what is not wrong, what is not right. So then that way you're better to advocate for yourself. And let me just say this, because sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, I was guilty of lying or just not telling the full truth to my provider, because I just did not want to be maybe put on a medication or be not listen to. Because sometimes some medical providers, they tend to shut us down and just think, okay, you know what, this is what the problem is. Let me just put your medication. Let me just do this and think that's all. When in fact, we're the ones who are living with our bodies. We know what's right, what feels right, and what feels wrong. So definitely encourage you to not be afraid to advocate for yourself. Another thing that you want to think about is something that I don't often think about, but I did recently because I noticed something. What you want to do is skin self-exam. Especially if you're someone you're immunocompromised, these are things that you want to do. You want to ensure that everything is intact with your skin. We're taught to wear sunscreen every day. I know as Black women sometimes, or Black people, we're like, oh, we don't need sunscreen. Yes, we do. So you definitely want to do a skin cell exam as well. You want to ensure that you know how your body looks, how your skin looks. So if there's any sort of abnormalities, you can communicate that with your care provider. That's very, very important. You also want to do, if you're an older individual, osteoporosis screening, like you want to test for bone density. Because sometimes, we may have some risk factors. As we're getting older, our bones are changing, they're getting weaker as we age. So you definitely want to also test for that. So I know my age range when it comes to my listeners, they range from young to the older population, but you definitely, as we continue to get older, we want to be able to get that screening to test our bone density so we can know what to do. And some of these factors can come from smoking, heavy alcohol use as well. So you definitely want to factor these things in when it comes to your screenings. And the last thing I'm going to say as well is your mental health. And I know everything that we talk about, mental health in society and social media, but you definitely, when we're talking about our overall health and wellness, you definitely want to check in with your mental health as well. On some of your visits with your primary care provider, they may be asking you about your mental health. They may be trying to see, where you are as well. Are you depressed? Do you have anxiety? What is your diet and exercise looking like? What is your alcohol and tobacco use like? Do you have any safety issues? Are you wearing seat belts? Is there smoke detectors in your house? Is there any sort of, let's say, intimate partner violence? Your medicines, all these different things. So all that contribute again, one, to your mental health and to your overall well-being. I remember one time I was asked, whatever the question was as it relates to, I guess it was something to do with intimate partner violence. And I got offended at one point, young and naive. I'm like, why would I be in this? But as you continue to grow, you realize that these are some challenges that so many of us may face at some point in our lives. So of course you want to ensure that you are taking care of your mental health. If you're someone who you're in the position to, or it's possible for you to see a therapist, you want to do that. And I know sometimes many of us, we don't know how we can start therapy or what to do. And I will say that I have an upcoming episode about how to start therapy, because sometimes, especially in my community, sometimes we tend to label having any mental health issues as if someone is crazy or is something negative, but we all could use someone or a trusted individual so that we can ensure that our mental health is intact, because the way in the world is too much. A lot is going on, and we do need that support. And of course, we may have like siblings or a close friend, but sometimes again, it just takes the help from a professional. And that's how you build that rapport. I also recommend you getting a blood test. One, of course, with these other different tests, but you also need to know what your blood type is. That is very important, especially if something were to happen to you where you need blood. It's very important that you know what your blood type is. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm telling you this right now. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what is my blood type again? I know what it is because it's in my phone written down. And sometimes when I can't remember, I just have to text my father, Daddy, what is your blood type again? And he'll tell me. I'm like, okay, I got it. But it's very important that you know what your blood type is as well, so that way you can better advocate for yourself as well. As I wrap up, I would recommend you keeping how should I put it? I want you to keep a medical journal. Keep a medical journal. I will say I was inspired because I take mental notes and I do journal and I do write things down when it comes to my health so that I don't forget. But I remember having a client, she was having her baby, and she was, when I say the most organized client a doula can ever need. She had everything in that folder. She had from the blood type to this to that to what she was experiencing, because again, she was someone who was immunocompromised as well, but she had everything organized. And I took that from her and I said, you know what, going forward, for someone who suffers from chronic migraines and other gastro issues, I do definitely need to make sure that I'm keeping that journal so I can know what's going on. So you're not going to just put any sort of medication on me, but I can advocate for myself based on how I feel with my body. So I do advise you to get a medical journal. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can just be a book, a notepad that you have that you write down if you notice something is off. Because this is going to get us to pay more attention to our bodies and our health. Because we cannot talk about health and wellness and just think it just requires drinking more water. No, we have to have that medical journal so that if you're someone who may have an immunocompromised system, or you have other issues, or you're just starting to notice, again, our environment does play a role in our health issues as well. So it's important for us to keep that journal. So then that way, when something goes wrong, we can revert back to that journal so we can explain to our primary care provider and better advocate for ourselves. So as I go, you want to ensure that you're getting your blood tested so you know what your blood type is. You want to also get your blood pressure checked at least 1 to 3 times a year and know what your blood pressure is so you can know what is your baseline, what is your normal. So that way you can be more in tuned in knowing if your blood pressure can be too high, if it's out of the normal range as well. And it helps to determine and prevent any sort of heart disease or kidney problems as well. And of course, preeclampsia if you're pregnant or going to postpartum as well. You want to do a breast cancer screening. You definitely want to practice your breast self-exams regularly so you can test for any abnormalities, whether it's lumps or any changes in your breast as well. You want to do cervical cancer screening. That should start at 21 years, unless otherwise advised by your provider, but you also want to do that. You also want to do a colorectal cancer screening as well to check for any polyps or anything that could be going on in your gastro area as well. You also want to get your cholesterol checked. Don't be like me. You want to get your cholesterol checked so then that way you can know what lifestyle changes you need to make. You also want to get tested or get that diabetes screening to see if you're pre-diabetic or if you're diabetic or if you may end up even developing gestational diabetes as well. So you definitely want to get that screening for diabetes. You want to ensure that you're practicing proper oral hygiene. You want to do your oral cancer screening. That's the thing as well. I got one done a few years ago. I think that's recommended, I think every 5 to 10 years, but again, don't quote me. But you want to ensure that you are actually going to your dentist at least once or twice a year to get a cleaning so that you can ensure that everything is going well in that department, because again, your oral health is linked to so many other things in our bodies, and that's something that we often times forget. So you want to do that. You want to also get your eye exam every 2 years, because of course, given our environment that we're living in, you just never know. And it's best to know what's going on with your eyes as well, because we do need our eyes. It's very important. And if we're blessed to have, vision, we want to ensure that we are taking care of that. You also want to do any testing for any infectious disease screening, such as STI, STDs. If you're sexually active, you want to be screened for chlamydia and gonorrhea. And then, of course, hepatitis C. You want to make sure that you're up to date with your vaccination if that's something that you do. You also want to ensure that you're having your physical exam done every year with your primary care provider to assess for any future or potential medical problems, to know what sort of lifestyle changes you can make for you. And I want to point that out really quick, because sometimes we're on our social media and we are seeing people, we see what works for other people, the lifestyle changes that they make. But we have to understand that not everything that we see means it's going to work for us. We have to know our body and know what works for us. So that's why you got to ensure that you're doing that physical exam so you can get when you're changing that lifestyle or you're making that lifestyle change, it's tailored specifically for you as an individual. You want to know your height, your weight, your BMI. You want to be able to advocate for yourself. I don't care what that white coat comes in to say. You want to ensure that you're advocating for yourself. If you're not feeling heard, then it's okay also to switch your care provider as well, and be honest with your care provider as you build that relationship. You want to do, a test for skin cancer, do those skin self-exam, know what your body looks like. So if something different pops up, it's abnormal. So, you can go to your doctor to get that screening as well. You also want to check, as we age, our bones are going to get weaker. So you want to do an osteoporosis screening to test for your bone density. And of course, you want to ensure that you are seeking the help of a therapist or a trusted individual as it relates to your mental health. Because again, we cannot talk about all the things physically and not talk about our mental health. Know when to take breaks, know when something is too much, know how to create your boundaries as well. But I definitely want to thank you, my friend, for joining me here in the tea tasting room. And I hope this helped. If you know of any other screenings that we should be doing as individuals, feel free to tag me on Instagram at Tea with Tanya Podcast or hop into my DMs and let me know what you should be, what I miss. I will see you in the tea tasting room next week, where we're going to be talking about all things birth control. I know that's going to be a very spicy, juicy, tasty episode. I will see you next week. I love you for listening. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Tea with Tanya. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Tea with Tanya Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the weekly Tea Talk newsletter. And of course, rate on Apple or Spotify and subscribe wherever you listen. See you next time. I love you for listening.